share the link in Meetup page and everywhere else in social media. So this session is slightly different than the normal sessions we do in this group, because this group is mainly like Power BI user group. So sessions are normally Power BI oriented and technical. This is not technical, not related to Power BI, and it is not presentation style as well. So it would be Neil, Bronwyn, and I like trying to open some discussion points that about your career development, about how you can deal with your manager and things around it. And one of the goals is actually you also to talk and discuss about pain points you have or solutions you might have. We all trying to learn from each other. That's me. Neil, do you want to crack it on, start or whatever?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think the way we started this, we did this session like this, 30-minute session, and we thought that it wasn't enough time. So we thought we'd do another one and try doing it here on this user group with these lovely people. And I think, you know, if you have things you're interested in, conversations around how you manage people or how you manage your manager, you know, you can ask those questions, put your hand up or type them in the chat channel. But I think the way we started last time, Reza and Bron, was we kind of did a round of like from our point of view, what is management? And what does that mean to us? And then that triggered a whole bunch of, I guess, follow-on questions, didn't it? Of kind of what people were struggling with or what people found worked well for them. So maybe I'll just kick off by kind of thinking around or talking a little bit around what I think management is about. And you know, I guess the focus is the IT industry, seeing as that's where we're all at. And I'm assuming most of the people joining are from some kind of IT industry. And I thought it was actually kind of funny that you said it's got nothing to do with Power BI, because I know several managers that manage all their teams through using tools like Power BI.
Yeah.
To manage the effectiveness of every individual. But I guess, you know, I come from a very strong software engineering background, and my view is that software is an output of the team. And so really the manager's job is to align the team to get the best product we can get as we're building, and work out how to unblock people from problems. And so I think the manager's role for me is very much around, it's almost, you know, the ideal manager is almost invisible. They somehow magically, without you knowing about it, have unblocked problems and aligned the team to deliver what the team knows how to do, but as a team rather than as a group of individuals. And so to me, that's really where I try, when I'm taking a management role, that's where I try and be. And when I'm looking for a good manager, that's what I tend to be looking for, is someone that can get out of the way when they need to, but intercept and remove problems when they need to as well. Bron, what are your thoughts on
just one thing, would be good if you also introduce yourself as well.
Oh, I can introduce myself. Yes, I suppose so, for those that don't know me. I'm Neil, sometimes called Dr. Neil. I've been developing software for over 30 years. I've created 7 different startup companies over the years, some of which I wouldn't call startups anymore. Some have been more successful than others, which is nice. And yeah, currently I'm consulting and supporting different software teams to deliver their products, and working with a number of different teams and contractors and full-time employees within different companies. And I guess I get to see quite a range of interactions between humans leading to the development of product, mostly software products, sometimes hardware. And yeah, that's my background and that's what I do.
Good. Bronwyn?
My turn? Okay. Hi, I'm Bronwyn. So I've been doing software not quite as long as Neil, but a fair amount of time. I've been mainly concentrated in Microsoft stack for quite a long time. I like to do short, sharp projects and help where the pain points are and enjoy like a new challenge and improving the processes along the way. For me, the management, similar to Neil, I like it when the managers get out of the way and let me do my job. And then obviously when things go bad, that they know how to come in and help and unblock, and particularly with a lot of the politics type stuff, that's when a really good manager can be really useful. The really good ones I think I've worked with over the years, like use different styles of management with different team members, and they work with you to work out the best way that you work with them. And the ones that I've worked well with, like I can tell them how I like to be managed, and they can let me do it the way that works best for us in sort of like a collaborative style. That's for me, yeah. Reza?
Sounds good. I'll just check if someone's microphone seems to be on here. Sorry, just give me a second. I'll monitor microphones as well. If anyone is not speaking, please make sure mute your microphone. We'll have some points that you can unmute yourself, of course.
Small things that make a big difference.
Okay, I think this.
Don't worry, I muted them.
I just muted everyone, Reza, including you. Sorry.
No, that's all fine. Thank you, Neil. So yeah, I'm Reza Rad, Power BI MVP, doing a lot of like Power BI these days. But my background started with software development a long time ago, and then gradually to database development, then into BI space these days and data analytics. Definition of management, yeah, pretty much like what Neil and Bronwyn said, more like, let's say, someone who will reduce the friction on the team, like if the team are together working towards a common goal, building a software, delivering an application for the customer, or delivering, let's say, an operational system, whatever it is, a BI system for the customer. Manager's job is to make that easier, not to make it harder, of course. Like not to be the boss, to be someone who, so that the team can actually rely on if they have a blockage somewhere, if they hit a particular roadblock at certain time, like this is going over budget, this needs some discussions with another team, with this department, things like that. Manager helps on that, so the team can together go towards that common goal, so which actually is based on what company's goal is, to have people in the company, of course, to build something, to deliver it to the customers, either internal or external. So if you also have like any points you would like to mention, feel free to just mention it in the chat window. It will get discussed about that as well. And I think, Neil, last time you had some discussions about types of management, things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess just following on from what you said, that I think is triggered something else for me, which is, you know, I think that a lot of the time companies create these overheads for people of things that need to get done that are not really core to the job you're doing. So say, for example, you're a software developer, your core thing is building software, fixing bugs, delivering product, and yet there's all this sometimes ceremony and sometimes overhead, paperwork, other things. And so I tend to look for managers that can take that away from developers, so they can focus on the thing that we're paying them lots of money for, rather than, you know, filling in a spreadsheet with the, you know, work they've been doing that week or something. So I guess the other thing managers can do well is look to ways to reduce, like you said, reduce the friction. And I guess I was just opening that box a little bit wider of kind of what the frictions are that people see when they're doing their day-to-day job, and where managers can help reduce that friction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of those frictions normally is like micromanagement. Not everyone is fan of that. Different for different people, of course, but one of them is something like that.
Yeah.
That like if you try to tell, especially like senior members of the team, that you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, that might not be like ideal.
Yeah, Richard's raised that question, which I was kind of waiting for, because we talked about it a lot last time, which is non-technical managers managing technical products. Maybe Bron, do you have a first stab at how to handle non-technical managers managing technical projects?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the specific problem that you're having with them. For me, a lot of the time it's working out the right common language or analogies to use with them so that you can be on the same page and talk the same language, and building that trust so that they end up like, so that they can trust you, that when you tell them something that they believe you, and it's so that you don't end up in those conversations where it's, it's just this screen or it's just a query and they don't understand how complicated it is and how to break that down into language that will help you communicate how hard or difficult or unknown a problem is to solve.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned a couple of times a word that I red flag almost immediately when I hear it in kind of team meetings, which is "you just." So the word "just," when anyone just has, you just have to fix the bug, you just have to make the database work, you just have. Whenever I hear that word, it like,
yeah, I have to take a big deep breath. It's like,
right, I'm going to have to tackle this one. Yes, absolutely. Reza?
Yeah, like I'd say like managers comes from different background. Like sometimes you have a manager who was one like senior member of the team who is coming actually from technical background and become a manager. So that person normally understands the technical side of it. And in some aspects that brings some benefits because can understand what team is saying. But you also get like people managers, those who don't really understand the technical aspects of it, but they are, let's say, either product manager, people manager. They are working towards that common goal. What I've seen working a lot is that having like a senior member in the team, senior technical member in the team, like architect, like let's say lead tech, whatever you might call that position, to help manager to understand what the team is saying. Otherwise, like teams might be like screaming that this is not going to work, this is not going to finish in this time, and then manager saying no, it is going to be working. So finding that someone who can like turn the dial towards manager, non-technical, technical, that might be helpful. But that's my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this last time as well. I do sometimes, and it very much, as Bronwyn says, depends on the project. But a lot of the projects I get involved in seem to be quite deep technical projects. And I do sometimes wonder how on earth anyone could manage that if they weren't someone that had written code within, their memory and understood how problems get solved. I do think that there are certain types of projects that are really, really difficult to manage if you're not technical, if you're not hands-on, able to go to the Git repo and build the code yourself and play with it. Then you could end up in a position where you're really just making calls without really understanding the implications. And I do think that is a real challenge in this industry, that there are some very technical projects and they require definitely very high level of expertise in all the way up the stack of the team, and to try and manage that without that technical expertise I think is close to impossible. I think there are other projects that are probably very doable, and especially when they're more maybe product focused or customer focused. If you've got someone that's a product expert or a customer expert, they could be a very good manager of that team because they can play the role of the customer for the developers. But yeah, it is a tough call. We've got another question, which I think is a good one, which is, I guess we are discussing this like, we're a group of experienced people that have been working in the industry for decades, and yet how do we, like, it's always good, actually. I think it's a good practice to kind of bring it back down to, like, I would take it further than just a junior or someone that's new into the industry, but how would you explain a manager to a 4-year-old? It's kind of like, well, it is an interesting way of thinking about it. It's like, you need to kind of take a step out of your space that you're in and think about what is it that the role is actually there to do. Reza, do you have any thoughts on that?
Like explaining a manager to a 4-year-old. How does my
Well, I mean, the actual question is for someone who's just new in the industry. So someone just starting their career, how would you explain what a manager does to that person? But I'm adding some extra spice to it and saying, how would you explain it to a 4-year-old? Because I think if you can explain something well to a 4-year-old, everyone gets it, right?
Yeah, I'd say manager is someone who have access to some extra more resources that the whole team doesn't have because of like they are involved in some other work, and access to those resources can be helpful in cases that there are some frictions, blockage, so that the team can have like an easy route towards that common goal of building the product, delivering this project, something like that. I would say.
Bron, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say it's a bit of a, like, from a 4-year-old's perspective, it'd be a bit of a combination of all those amazing people around you when you're young, like your teacher who helps to teach you a new skill. It might be to help you focus on your work, or, your parent that helps you, like, get the right food and learn the right things to say and how to interact in society. The manager can help you work out how to do your job more efficiently and help you learn how you learn best in a workplace. Kind of like a bit like a magician pulling out some magic tricks. When things go bad, they can fix it. Or the doctor that comes in and fixes up, your cold, they can come and fix up a problem that you're having with trying to get your work done. Ideally, obviously.
Yeah.
In practice, maybe not.
I might use another M word, which is mentor. I think that a good manager is a good mentor, is someone that supports you and your growth. It's interesting the point you make about resources. I think sometimes those resources are just as simple as knowing who else in the company to talk to about something, right? So often it's someone who's maybe been in the company for a while and they've maybe worked in different groups around a bigger company, if it is a bigger company. And so they know that when you get a challenge, when you hit a roadblock, oh yes, I know the group that managed to solve that previously, and they know who to go to and open that door. So I wonder a little bit about that kind of thinking of your manager as your mentor is maybe a good approach to take, and working with them on that level as well. So you're saying, okay, your job is not just to tell me what to do, but actually to help me grow in my career. And a good manager will be someone that wants to see you succeed and grow over the time that they're your manager, and even afterwards they want to watch you grow going forward. So I think that definitely contributes to the conversation.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, like, help you find those sponsors as well. So when you're looking for those new projects or positions, like, they've connected you to a sponsor who can advocate for you to move into those roles that aren't necessarily on your manager's team or manager's remit, like the connector to help you find the people that can sponsor you as opposed to mentor you.
Yeah, Tim makes a good point. Tim, do you want to unmute yourself and talk to that? Because I think that is an interesting...
Yeah, sure. Just saying that one extra resource that managers might have would be time, or at least it can feel like that sometimes. Maybe they are very busy and don't have time, but from my perspective, they have time to step back and think about things, maybe make those connections. Yeah, that was it really.
Yeah, no, I think that is true, and I think that is a good point to make, is that the manager should be someone that sees a bigger picture, and they may not see the whole big picture the same way their manager maybe does, but they see a bigger picture of how what we're doing in a team fits into the company goals, or the structure, or a bigger product that you're building, or And hopefully the manager imparts that information to the team. I think actually the most powerful teams are teams that understand how they fit into the big picture of the company or the team or the product that they're working on. If you're working on, I need to make these cogs spin faster, and you have no idea why the cogs need to spin faster, it all seems a bit pointless. If you understand you're actually building something that's a much bigger machine, it feels like you're actually contributing. So yeah, I think that's partly the manager's job, is to help you understand the thing that you're focused on, which may feel like insignificant, is actually an important part of a bigger picture.
Yeah, which actually brings us to the transparency point. Do you think it's good to be transparent, not to be transparent?
I prefer it, but I'm also quite direct, so I don't. Yeah, I prefer knowing things.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough call, because I think that absolutely everyone prefers transparency, and yet sometimes there are things that cannot be discussed, right? Like depending on who you're working for and what projects you're on, and sometimes there will be levels of, like, pay grade at which you are allowed to know something or not know something, and that makes, in many ways, that makes everything much harder to work on, and yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I think everyone probably would agree with Bron. Like the best is to have complete transparency and be fully aware of how everything fits together. But yeah, I'm also aware that sometimes you can't get all the way. And sometimes the big picture is actually really, really complicated. And, very difficult for anyone to truly get their head around the whole thing. Certainly at a detail level. So, our job within this team might be to understand the details of this like no one else does. And no one else in the company maybe understands the details as well as this team, but they understand other details. And so it's pulling all those pieces together, I think, is also interesting.
But also, they also have to be aware that some people too much, some of that big picture stuff and that detail overwhelms a lot of people and adds stress as well. And it's making that call based on each person, like what suits them best and keeps them motivated and focused as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which actually brings us to the question from Ijaz about motivating team members. Do you want to turn on your microphone, Ijaz, and talk about it?
What I brought up also ties back to the previous question I asked about how would you be? My question was mostly, how would I be a manager to somebody who is just starting out their career? Like, what kind of stuff should I do? Like, for instance, the talk about removing friction applies well to experienced people because they know what they're doing and they just need, to get there, without the friction, right? But if I'm somebody new, I kind of don't know what I'm doing. I'm not all that confident, right? An experienced professional is more likely to be confident and they know what they're doing and so on. But a new guy is not all of that. And in that case, how would I be a good manager to that person? And I guess some of it is to motivate and build up that their confidence, right? So they can go and do or reach their potential. So that's where I was coming from. And sometimes I see people who are not motivated at all. They just get their job done to get their paycheck. And I think part of being really motivated and passionate about the job you do is to know the bigger picture and know what you're working for or working toward. So how would we motivate our team members, especially if they're new? That's what I would like to hear you discuss for a bit.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I apologize. I guess I misunderstood your previous question. So, yeah, I mean, I think bringing on new people is actually a very important thing. Like I have worked in some teams that have, I guess they're very lucky in some ways. They've managed to keep the same people in the team for 5, 10, in some cases 15 years, which is kind of amazing and means the team is very solid, but they're not backfilling, they're not creating a new inflow of new ideas. I actually really welcome bringing juniors and younger career starters into teams, because they often come with ideas that everyone has already discarded because they tried it 10 years ago and it doesn't work. Well, maybe it does work now. And so I think encouraging people to bring in new ideas, encouraging young blood in many ways to come in and try and shake things up is always a good thing. It's very difficult to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but yes, creating an environment which they feel comfortable asking questions and pushing boundaries, and actually even creating friction sometimes is a good place to start. So think about, like, if you're managing a team and you're bringing in new people, I tend to think about, how do I mentor them to feel comfortable asking anyone in the team any question, during their work time, or even, sending an email out of work if they have an idea. That's fine. Our working hours are a little bit flexible nowadays, I think, for most people. You may get up and take the kids to school and then come back and start doing some work, and then go and pick the kids up and have dinner and then do some more work. Like, everyone seems to be a bit more, thankfully in some ways, I think, more flexible. But yes, I think, back to your point of how do you get someone started, from my perspective, it's very much around providing the framework to let them feel safe trying things. And I think the other thing is creating an environment where failure is acceptable. Like, failure isn't a bad thing. You learn a lot from failing. Like, in some ways, encouraging people to experiment and letting them fail and they learn is how we've all learned things. And so I think that's an important kind of structure, scaffolding that you need to put around your team.
Sorry guys, this is Amelia. One of the things that I've seen work really well is creating a buddy system. So if you have those juniors coming in, is teaming them up with a more mature or more seasoned developer or consultant, and then letting them work with that buddy for 6-12 months. And also then bring a bit of a human aspect, a more of a softer touch, like, hey, let's go have a coffee, let's talk about things that is not necessarily just the stuff that you struggle with from a work perspective, but also maybe there's someone in the team that you have a clash with or something like that. Because I think one of the things that often gets missed out when you have a technical person becoming a manager is that they're really good at writing code, but they might not be that great at being a manager, having those softer skills. So it's a very, very difficult thing to balance. But I think that's where teams become very successful, is if they work together and helping the younger guys upskilling and being mentors. Those guys will become great managers one day. So it's just collectively working as a team. It could be just cementing the team in a nice way. My 5 cents worth. Sorry.
No, I think it's absolutely right, and actually, it's a very good point that if you enable team members to become mentors, they learn some entry-level management skills, because they are a manager in some regard, or at least a mentor for one person, maybe 2 people. And if you're going to be a manager of, say, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, learning to be a mentor for those people is one of the important skills. And you're also right, like it's a whole other topic really, is the soft skills side of it, which maybe we could break into.
Yeah, I've seen the buddy stuff work really well, especially if you have multiples, like, you know, have someone you can go to ask how to work the timesheet system or how do I enter my expenses, all that stuff, that the admin stuff that, you know, if you don't get it right, you're in a world of pain, for sure. But also if the manager can also like pair them up with all sorts of different people as well, like not just technical, but someone that knows, you know, how the career progressions work and, you know, how to take advantage of the different, you know, things in the company as well. It makes a big difference. And working with them about the best way that they learn. So like an example I had was we had a project and we had a lot of like written documentation, like readme files and stuff, but the person, they were quite visual, so they liked learning from videos. So when we did stuff with them, we would record it and we just sort of add it to a collection. So then they had that and they started adding videos to it. So we just like expanded the different ways people could consume information, and depending on how they learnt, they could go to each of those different mediums as well.
Sounds like you're talking about a bit of Microsoft Viva.
Viva, yeah, I mean Viva is an interesting player. Then it's early days. It'd be interesting to see how well that gets adopted. But yeah, we definitely need stuff like that in the workplace, right? We need, and I think Bronwyn's point is interesting, that often the manager doesn't just have to be a technical mentor. They have to be someone that's a mentor for guiding you through the company. Like a lot of big companies, if anyone here works at big companies, you know, I feel sorry for you sometimes, but I have in the past worked for big companies. And yes, there's this huge overhead of not really understanding where you go to get certain things done, or how you even, you know, put in your leave application, or, you know, ask for, you know, time off that you need for carers leave, or work out how you know, try and spin up some other project or put a proposal into the company. All those things that probably managers have experience of, and can mentor people through and guide people through, is also part of that role. And how to even just find people within the company. Like lots of companies have different structures, organization charts and mechanisms for finding the right person to answer a question. So yeah, process, I guess, is really what it's partly about, as well as being a process mentor for the company process.
Yeah, and I think that body mentor program is good for both type of like team members, both juniors and seniors, because juniors will get connected to someone who can be like their support to learn. Also for seniors who will feel that they are appreciated for the work that they have done. Now they can guide someone, they are experienced, so they are recognized for that. So it's definitely something worthwhile.
Yeah, especially I've seen it work really well with like when they have a bit of a structure. So it's like the grads from last year become the buddy for the new intake for the grad program, because I was you last year. They like can really empathize with them quite well, and yeah, having a bit of a range.
Yeah, that definitely helps. And yeah, I mean, I think everyone from someone that's only been around for a year in a company through to someone that's been around for 20 years adds different levels of value, right? So I think one of the things I've found the most powerful within some companies I've worked for is making it very clear that doors are open. I mean, I think Intel did this really well with like, we don't have any offices, which basically meant all doors were open the whole time. You know, you could walk up to anyone and talk to anyone. Of course, there's always that kind of whole social stigma of, oh, you know, I can't go to that guy, he's the managing director of Intel USA or whatever. But it does work to some degree, like breaking down physical barriers sometimes works, as well as the kind of mental barriers that exist.
Yeah, we have a good discussion about like kind of like being transparent from manager to like pass on the stress from top layers to down or not. Zara, do you want to turn on your microphone, camera, talk about it?
So what is Zara saying? That, yeah, I think that's an interesting point that, and I've probably been culpable, guilty of this at points where the stress put upon me as I'm managing a product being developed becomes very high, and that gets, exposed and rubbed off onto the teams, and you have to be really kind of conscious, self-conscious, self-aware. And it's difficult. It is a very difficult problem to solve, I think, that there are pressures applied at all angles, I think. And actually, in many ways, if you're a middle manager, it's the worst place to be, because you're kind of getting pressure applied from below in terms of this don't work, or I need this fixed, or you got to help me reduce this friction, you got to do this, you got to do that, I need this done. And then when you've got pressures applied from above at the same time of why is this not done? You said it was going to be done last month and we're now running late and over budget, etc., which every software project seems to do on a regular basis. Because, the only real answer to how long is it going to take is I'll tell you when it's done. But I think that is a real problem. Like, how do we? I feel like, mindfulness and self-awareness, but a lot of that comes with maturity too. Like, I will admit, as a younger manager, I was probably not a great manager on many levels because the stress being applied was, passed on, both up and down. And yeah, you end up just, in some ways, as part of your job, you end up feeling like you're playing piggy in the middle with things being thrown at you from all angles. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that kind of thing or has ideas as to how to solve for it.
I think it's really tough, like, to find that right balance. Like, I've had the opposite where, like, I've been as like the tech lead or whatever, I've been like I've shielded the team so much that, like, you do a retro and I'm like, whoa, I'm really bad, and they're like, everything is awesome, and it's like, wow, like, I've just done too much shielding. I think it's like trying to strike that balance is really hard sometimes.
Yeah, there are some practices saying that you should not be doing negative down, and on the other hand side, there are some practices saying that, like, being transparent helps also your team to understand, like, the challenges. Like George, the answer here is kind of like one of those situations. Do you like to talk about it, George?
Sure. I mean, my point is that at a certain degree, yes, there needs to be some shielding because we have different roles and different stress levels. But as a developer, I would want to get at least a feeling of what happens around it. Like, if I do have the feeling that everything runs fine, but my manager is under a lot of stress, I think that's not fine. I mean, I do need to get a sense of the reality for it. And the same as I do expect my manager to help me when I'm in need, I think the manager expects the same from his team.
That's a very valid point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that point of just being as open as you can afford to be, to make it clear that, like, upper management somewhere higher up is not happy with how things are going, so the development team understands it, but there is this kind of, yes, but I don't want them stressed out, I want them to be able to carry on and keep focused on working. And so, yeah, it is a fine balance, as Bronwyn says, to make it work well for everybody. And I mean, I think someone else pointed out that there's this kind of other challenge certainly in the IT workplace, but I think in every workplace, where you have some of the people that you're working with are insanely passionate about what you're doing, and they're coming to user groups like this and having conversations and trying to work out how to be better at their career, how to improve themselves, and they're on this kind of path of continuous self-improvement. And there are other people who, they turn up at 9, they go home at 5, they've done their JOB and they want to get paid, and There are definitely places for both. Like I definitely have worked in companies where absolutely, if there weren't those people that turned up at 9 and went home at 5 and did their JOB, there would be big chunks of stuff that didn't get done, right? Like, because it wasn't that exciting, right? And so the people that are very excited about, passionate about doing things, often want to get involved in new projects and doing passionate, following their passion. They don't want to be maintaining the AS400 program that's been running the business for 40 years. So I think that, you do need to appreciate there are both sides of the story, and people choose their own adventure in life and take that path. That's fine.
And then those people can bring a lot of balance to the force,
Absolutely.
right? Like
Yeah,
they can help prevent those people from overworking and thinking that they have to work 20 hours a day, and help bring that balance back in the team a bit as well.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot in this industry, that people seem to feel that they need to all be doing the no sleep, code forever campaign, which we all know as the death march. But yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'd like to open like a sub discussion in the middle of this to say, like, how do you, like, if you are a member of a team and you are not happy with something in the team or with the manager, how do you open up that discussion with the manager? Like, do you just go and leave the team, or you just try to resolve it?
Yeah, and that's kind of the crux of this whole topic, really, isn't it? Is, do you change your organization, or do you change your organization? Yeah, it is. I think that there are. I think it was Martin Fowler who came up with that original statement of, either you change your organization or you change your organization. But yeah, the opportunity to go and talk to people. I think, like, hopefully you have a manager that you can have a calm conversation with, but sometimes it's a case of working out the right environment too. Like, okay, we've mostly been working remotely for many of us for a while now, but having a real in real life coffee with someone can take the pressure off, right? It can be a bit less formal than kind of, we're going to have a meeting. And if you can work out ways that you can have more of those informal conversations, you get to understand maybe a bit more of the pressure that a manager is under, as well as them understanding some of the pressures you're under. I think good managers tend to do regular coffee conversations or virtual coffees nowadays with their team members, kind of more one-on-one. And I've certainly experienced that from both sides, as a manager and as someone being managed. Having those less formal conversations often help guide the more formal conversations.
And also, if you can talk to someone else on the team first, I guess, as well, and bounce some of the ideas and get a bit of feedback and work out exactly like what the outcome you want is, and what's the line that you need to draw that's too much or too little for you to stay or go. And I think there's a lot of there's a lot of stories about how many times you wake up and want to like hit the red door that you've had enough before you have to say, like, I just can't do it anymore, and that's okay. And that takes a certain level of privilege as well in your situation, and only you can decide that what that is for you.
Yeah, that talking with another team member definitely worthwhile, because they might have had that problem, they discussed it, had some outcomes, or might advise like different approaches, or like do this, get this, something like that. Yeah, Indira has a quite good point as well. Indira, you want to talk about it more?
Yeah, sometimes the manager may not be in a position to be open for conversation as well. Yeah, sometimes there might be some bias towards some team members. I have seen this situation happen with some of my colleagues. So yeah, sometimes may not be open, and so there is no point. One of my colleagues said that there is no point in talking to that person. So yeah, he just left the organization instead of organizing. Yeah.
Yeah, usually like a direct side effect of that normally is like someone leaving the team.
Yeah, they leave the manager instead of the company.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amelia.
But that's that's
yeah.
where team culture comes in. And if you can build a team culture where it's inclusive, and I think again it boils back to the type of manager that you have. If you build an inclusive team, your team will be happy to discuss openly situations with other team members. But if your manager is a bit of an arse, then you don't have that opportunity. So and that is where Indra's right. People will leave managers and not jobs, because that's what people do. They leave managers. They don't really leave jobs.
And I see that this happens particularly in small to mid sized organizations, where I think in this case I feel that the manager felt some insecurity from the team member. So
Yeah.
that's why I think the rift started, maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and if it's not big enough that you can sort of move around them or move above them without getting yourself in trouble, like you don't have a lot of options left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like one of the things is also the culture in the organization. Like that team culture is something that you have to build inside the organization. Like I've been working in a consulting company. We had a client, and I've been in a team meeting in that client's team, like their internal team meeting as a external consultant. I was there, and it was not a good team culture at all. And then I thought, well, this might be like just this team having that. Then like a couple of weeks later, we had a meeting with like some higher level managers, and I've seen that like those higher level managers also have that kind of like culture. So sometimes that is the culture within that organization that needs to be kind of changed.
Yeah, I mean, culture is a very interesting topic on its own, let alone management and all the rest of it, because often with companies, the culture grows as the company grows, and often the company's successful businesses outgrow their culture, but they still have the culture that they had when they started. So if you take a business that's, say, 10 years old and it's doing quite well, it often still has a very strong startup culture from the founders, unless they've moved on, where they're still trying to behave as if there's 6 people in a room and not 500 people that they've grown to. And I've seen the same again, kind of 20 years, 30 years, on. And even when you look at big companies like Microsoft or Intel, they have a culture that has evolved over the, growth of those businesses. And so, yeah, I think being conscious of that is an important thing. There was something that someone was mentioning earlier that I think is an important thing to consider, which is that I agree that sometimes managers are very hard to talk to. I've probably been hard to talk to in the past for some people, and I'll accept that, I'll take that. But the challenge that then happens is that you go and start talking with the rest of your team, and if you get to a point where you have a majority of a team that feels like it's ganging up on the manager because they agree on one thing and the manager hasn't approved it or given approval on it, you can end up in quite nasty situations. And so you probably want to be aware of that if you are a manager and start to unwind it as quickly as possible. And if you're a team member, also think about how you unwind that from becoming a kind of us and them, because I think that's the worst scenario to get to, is the us and them scenario, where we're the team, we're the guys that are doing the work, and them managers don't understand what we're doing. And it flips the other way. tell you that there are some companies where the managers think they're the us, and them programmers don't know what they're doing. So yeah, I think that's just something to be conscious of as well when you're going into companies, when you're working in a company, that, you know, we're all humans and we all act as humans naturally act, which is in a tribal manner. Like, we're looking for who's in my tribe. And so you have to be conscious that you, as a manager, you bring the people along with you. You are part of their tribe. And as part of the tribe, you are conscious that your manager is also part of your tribe. I think they're interesting, or difficult maybe is the right word, concepts for people to grasp off. And especially, you know, if we go back to the more junior people entering into an industry, they all, I'm always, I guess, as someone that's been in, you know, working for, you know, more than half my life, I've been, you know, an employee or working, you know, for a company or employing people. I see that I guess juniors coming in expect the world to be kind of very structured and very organized. They don't expect to have kind of tribal battles in the workplace. And yet we're all humans and we're all having this every day. Like, every conversation we have is part of that, you know, are you in my tribe? Do you smell like I smell? Do you have the right paint on your face that means you're part of my tribe, or are you part of them? And I think just being aware of that often suddenly unblocks a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, and quite often we do it without thinking about it as well, right? Like, we'll put teams into names and there'll be team A, team B, and straight away then you've got the team like competition and team warfare, and then
Yes.
the testers versus the developers, or the IT support versus the, and it can get really horrible unless you can like get them to integrate and be one team. And that's really challenging once you like put that division in there to bring those walls back down again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it comes with the idea of team building, but in fact, in long term, it is not team building. It is like destroying that culture.
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that I've seen work quite well to do this is to encourage people to rotate. So if you've got a big enough company, you can encourage people to rotate through different areas of the company on a regular basis. And whether you decide that that's going to be every 18 months or every 2 years or every 3 years or whatever, it depends on maybe the scale of your business. But what that does is, for people that stay around 5, 6 years or longer, they get to see a lot of different areas of the business. And you break down a bunch of those. And if you have enough people, there's people rotating the whole time. And so you get a lot of these barriers being broken down, because Sue came over from the accounts management team and now she's working in this team. She can tell us what, you know, we think they're all aliens over there, but actually she isn't. So maybe they're not, right? So there's those kind of, I think, rotating people around the company is a very powerful way of breaking those barriers.
And then even within the team, like people that like to pair together all the time, making them split up, not forcing them to work with new people. So they, otherwise they end up very cliquey, and it can be really hard for new people to break into that clique.
Yeah, and they contain retained knowledge just in that clique. That is then very hard to spread to other people. If you can get them to work with other people, you're spreading that retained knowledge. So we're kind of breaking out of the pure management conversation, but into kind of company structure and evolution of the culture. But yeah, absolutely, Bron, you're right.
Yeah, Amelia mentioned also just like shuffling people, their desk, that can help. It's like when it's not virtual, of course.
Yeah, the desk thing's always interesting.
Yeah,
like I'm used to switching desks all the time, but yeah, some people that's a very stressful thing to do.
Yeah. But also the other thing that I've seen work really well is if you, when you start working on a project together, that team actually goes and huddle together in a couple of desks, so that they can build relationships and stuff for the project, and they close by to discuss different topics and so on, which also breaks down the barriers between cliquey employees. So yeah.
Yeah, the desk moving is definitely a strategy I've employed in the past, where, you know, even with small teams, I've got them to move around every 6 months to sit at different desks. Some companies now don't even have a desk for an employee, right? They just have open desking, so whoever gets there first. Of course, that creates a whole other tribal warfare of who can get into the office first to get the best desk. But yes, it's it's definitely a good strategy, and yeah, physically getting people together does help. Of course, I've built. I mean, maybe I'll just talk about this a little bit, but you know, since COVID started, I have actually created a whole team of people working mostly around Australia who have never met each other, and they've only ever met each other on Teams, and that has worked. And so I think, you know, it is possible. You just have to create the right environment and the right kind of project, and it is entirely possible to do that. You don't necessarily, and you know, what amazes me is when I look on Teams for that company that I built the team for, I see them talking with each other the whole time. So they've created their own culture, they've built their own team, and they've gone ahead and you know, collaborated. And I've, you know, run some virtual events for them on Teams where they can get to know each other a bit better, not just purely as work. But yeah, it's worked effectively. So I don't think it's necessarily about the real life meeting. It's about engaging and understanding each other more.
Yeah, like WooCommerce, I think, is one of those that their team is like spread everywhere. They like work remotely together. Definitely, there are many others too.
Are they millennials? Because that would be way better. Not. Oh, wow.
It's a big range. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's everything from grads all the way through to very seniors.
If you can bottle that, you'll make a lot of money.
If I can bottle that, I think I might call it snake oil. I'm not. I mean, I think it is kind of rare, but I suspect that there's going to be more and more of it, right? Like Paul Stovall, who created Octopus Deploy, built that whole business virtually. Like no one had. They didn't have their first ever office was opened recently, like last year or this year. So
just a couple of months ago, they did the big.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I mean, he's done an amazing job of really hiring people remotely. That everyone has worked remotely forever in that company from day one. So it is definitely possible, and I see the pattern of doing it. But yeah, you do have to pull a few different triggers because you can't get people in the same room. And you know, the advantage of that is, of course, that you can hire people in any city, right? As long as you're in roughly the right time zone. You don't have to limit yourself. Oh, I can only hire people in Sydney because they all have to be in the same room. I could hire people all over Australia and even New Zealand.
Neil, have you taken into account the personality types when you created the team, or didn't you take that into consideration?
I think I always take that into account when hiring people. So I think that's part of the hiring process is, you know, when you're building a team, I think it's often like, and maybe this is kind of relating to the manager conversation, is if you're a manager who's given a remit to build a team, I think what you're really looking to do is build a group of people that can be aligned in working towards a single goal. And so, you know, if you start off hiring people that tend to be very prickly to other people, you're not going to get there. So you're looking for people that have some level of people skills. Often you need some of those, you know, we all know them, right? We've all met and worked with someone who is technically just incredible, but their people skills. So they've got very high IQ, maybe you might say, and low EQ. And you need those kind of people too, but you need a way of cushioning them so they can engage with people that understand them. And I definitely have some of those people in some of the teams I work with. And I wouldn't lose them, like they're very valuable members of the technical team. But at the same time, you need other people that know how to engage with them.
Yeah, I think this is a good opening to like a question Tim asked. Tim Robinson asked about, let's say you decided to move on from a company. How do you gauge actually the culture of the next company? Tim, have you had any thoughts on that already?
Word of mouth. I think it's word of mouth. That's the only, well, because companies can write on their website and all that stuff about their culture and what their mission and all that stuff is. But I think if they have a good brand in the market, then that speaks for itself. So I think it's mainly around, hey, are these guys good? And I actually do this on a regular basis. Is if I go for an interview, I say, who can you please maybe give me 2 employees that I can talk to about how they feel working for your organization. And mostly companies are pretty happy to do that. If you just ask one person, then you'll just get one perspective. But if you ask 2 different people details, then at least you'll get a bit of a better sort of statistics of what's going on in that organization. So
yeah, I usually want to ask I want to speak to the person I'm reporting to and ask them how they, like, examples of how they've dealt with stuff, like how do you deal with underperforming people, have you like had to get rid of someone, you know, how do you deal with people that, you know, have like, you know, different issues, like they've had a lot of sick leave and stuff like that, and how do you bring them back into the team? And because if I can't talk to the person that's going to manage me, then you can't really tell till you get there. It's hard. It's definitely hard.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I'll accept a job if I don't know who I'm working for. If I haven't met my manager, I don't know if I'll actually accept that job.
Yeah, that is a very good point Bronwyn mentioned. Interview, usually, like when we go to interview, we think that it's that company assessing us, but we can also assess that company. Sometimes they ask, like, do you have any questions from us? So those are good points to ask some like critical questions. I mean, it would not clear up everything, but at least gives you some ideas about the culture.
Yeah, and I would say the current climate with such a high level of skills shortage, so there's way more demand than there is supply. Really, anyone that's looking for a job is interviewing companies to find the right job that they want to work in, not the other way around at this point in time. And that's certainly been my experience with hiring in the last year, is that I feel very much like I am being interviewed rather than I am interviewing, which is good. Like, I like that. I think that's actually really powerful. I definitely agree with find other people in the business that you can talk to and meet with and have conversations. I often will even just look on LinkedIn to see who's been working at the company for 4 or 5 years and just try and connect with them and have a conversation. And one of the things I have found is that there are some websites, like everyone probably knows, Glassdoor. But what I tend to find is those websites only attract, or they mostly attract, the negative, not the positive, of companies. And so you look on Glassdoor and you go, well, that company must really suck to work at. And then you meet some of the people and you realize, actually, it seems perfectly fine. And you go and do some work for them and they seem like a normal bunch of people. So I think, just be warned of that as well. Don't take those kind of websites too literally, because they tend to attract the people that didn't like it rather than the people that did like it. No one goes to a website where you complain about an employer to say how good they are.
Yeah, normally you get complaints as a review.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you can have pockets as well, right? Like, you can have a company that has overall like not a great reputation, but you'll have like a little team or a little section that have their own mini culture and are amazing. Like, yeah, it's interesting. It's really hard until you like, I just find I have to end up trying and seeing if it fits or not.
Yeah, well, the other thing I've done as a hiring manager is I've often asked my team members, people who are working in my team, to meet with candidates as well as I want to meet with them. But sometimes I'll ask them to meet first, just depends on scheduling, because I want their opinion. Like, if I've got 20 people in a team and we're trying to hire 2 new people, I want those 20 people to agree that we hired the right 2 people. So I can't ask 20 people to do the interview, but I can ask 2 or 3 of them to do an interview.
Yeah, and if you are joining like a really large enterprise, Microsoft or like big companies, different team might have different culture, definitely, as Bronwyn mentioned. So it is a good idea to like look at that team you are joining and see how the culture of that is essentially first.
Yeah, although I would add a caveat to that in that I've known a lot of people who have worked at Microsoft over the years, and nearly all of them have been hired for jobs that they weren't doing 6 months later. They ended up doing something else in the company.
Yeah, moving a lot between different teams, that happens quite a lot.
So you want to kind of be sure that you're going to a company that you could move in. Like if the role you're hiring for didn't exist, would there be somewhere else you'd want to be within that company? And I think that's something to just think about when you're taking on that. And we're now moving away from how do you manage your manager to how do you get a new job.
Well, that's the other thing. So we spoke about people that are joining user groups, people that are looking for career advancement. So, and if you go work for a company and you know that there's not going to be an opportunity for you to move to a next level, then that could potentially be a deal breaker too, because if you are that passionate person that want to grow and do more and become more and learn more products, then the typical Microsoft scenario is perfect, because you might be doing this now, but oh, hold on, there's something that's shiny over there. Let me go see what's going on there. So yeah, I think it also depends on the personality type.
Yeah, and a lot of that's to do with the size of the company, right? Like I think if you go and work at Google or Microsoft or Amazon, the companies are big enough that you can move around and do quite different things within the same company, not really changing your employer. If you go and, go to Startup Hub and find a company that's got 3 people and you're trying to be part of some exciting new adventure, it's going to be very different. You're probably going to be doing the same thing for the next few years at least until the company grows or fails. So yeah, that's part of the choose your own adventure book that you write as you go.
Right. Anyone else has any other things to discuss?
I'm interested in a question. We've got a lot of people in the audience. So, one of the questions that came up in the last time Bron and Reza and I did this was, what behavior would you wish your manager would do more of? And I think that's an interesting one. Like, I'd love to hear from people what they think, they would like to see their managers doing more of. Maybe just type it in the chat. But it might be an interesting
apart from raising salary.
Yes.
I think overall for most of them, I would say I wish they would reward the consistent worker as opposed to the person that feels the need to rescue the project at the end and does long hours, like the person that just turned up every day, did their job, got the task done, and never gets any acknowledgement because they just consistently put in effort. I think those people are usually undervalued by managers.
Yeah, I think the whole rewarding versus punishment is definitely much better, having the approach of rewarding.
Yeah, it's interesting what Bron is saying, because I think what you're saying is the opposite of hero culture, right? And I think one of the worst things I see in companies is when people get put on pedestals. Oh, he's the guy that saved the thing, that made the thing, that he's the guy that made this thing happen, and yet there's a whole team of people behind them that actually are driving that product to get to market, that are busy peddling all the wheels along. And yet, someone comes along at the end, or, they may have been working hard on it all the way through. But yeah, I think it is a very difficult thing to stop in a culture where the hero is always well regarded, and trying to change that existing culture is difficult. But yes, definitely watch out for stopping it starting in the first place if you can. And certainly within teams that you're managing or teams that you're in, try and avoid, oh yeah, that guy, he knows everything, or she's the one that knows everything about this, and yeah, we don't have a chance of ever being as good as she is. It's totally the wrong attitude to bring into the workplace.
And rewarding the people that stay up to 2 a.m.
Yeah,
every
exactly.
night. It's like, no, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't mind. Like, some people want to work weird hours, that's their choice, but I'm not going to put them on a pedestal for it. Right? Like, I totally get it. There are some people who have different like lifestyle choices and they want to work weekends or they want to work, you know, through the night because they're passionate about it. I'm not going to stop them doing it, but at the same time, I'm not going to make them the hero of the company or the team because they're doing it. It's their choice to do it. It shouldn't block anyone else from being successful.
Yeah, and Zara mentioned something as well. Do you like to talk about it if you can?
Yes, well, actually, when I mentioned being involved and available, I mean, usually when developers are dealing with technical issues and suddenly you face some kind of challenge that you need your manager to resolve it, for example, to liaise with the stakeholders, you know, this kind of thing. When the manager is not available, especially about those middle managers in the middle, and they are always in the meeting with higher management levels, and you can't find them, it can be very frustrating and difficult for the developers because you have some kind of span for your attention. You face those kind of issues, and if they cannot resolve it, and then tomorrow morning you should come back and continue debugging after things that get resolved, then you cannot focus the way you put, for example, the day before.
Yeah, definitely being available is a big thing. Like that is the whole
they are in meetings whole day, and when you need them, you cannot find them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might just need them for 5 minutes,
Yeah, actually that is the whole point of being manager, to be available for your team, which yeah, sometimes it doesn't really happen. They are all times in the meeting, so that's a really valid point.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you some tips as to things I've done and maybe things you could ask managers to do. One is office hours. So having a set block of hours, and it can be different every day, but having a set block that I am available, like actually putting in your calendar and blocking out, I am available for my team during these hours. Yes, there's other things that I have to go and, talk to the accounts department to make sure that everyone gets paid next month and make sure I've got budget to grow the team and, all these other things that we have to do as managers that no one who's in the development team wants to know about, and they're quite ugly and disgusting. So they have to get done because I don't want my devs doing it. And yet at the same time, I do need to be available. So I would suggest, if you have that challenge, try and encourage your manager to set up some blocks of hours within every day that they are available. The other thing is that I don't know if anyone is doing like a more agile practice, like whether they do stand-ups or scrums or whatever you want to call them, but managers should be attending those meetings. They shouldn't just be developer-only meetings. They should be attended by managers. If not every day, then I would say most days. In fact, I've been very impressed by one company I'm working with where the CTO randomly drops in on stand-up meetings every day. So there may be, I don't know, I'm trying to think how many teams there are, and it's a pretty big company, so maybe there's 30 teams, 30 development teams. So he randomizes, and every day he'll drop in on 2 or 3 of those development team stand-ups. And that's a very powerful message too, because it means he's there listening to what's happening on the ground. And he's like several levels up, maybe 2 or 3 levels up as a manager from the team managers that are in those stand-ups. So yeah, you may want to think about how that plays out within your organization too.
Okay. Feel free to ask any questions you have.
Silence is a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Now what should I do with my job?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think I often I guess I get approached quite a lot because I've known a lot of people over the years. I have a lot of contacts on LinkedIn. I've given up on Facebook because it's just a mess. But, you know, I was talking to someone who's, again, an ex-Microsoftie, and he was asking me some questions about, like, do I know this, do I know that, like looking for places that he might find some work. And I think that often we forget how lucky we are if we are in a job and how much the good things are. Like, I think that's the other thing about being a good manager, is teaching people not to take personally what's happening at work. Like, I think especially in an industry like ours, where we have a lot of people that are very passionate about what they're building, and we're very excited about what we're trying to get to our customers. We tend to take things very personally, and then people lose sleep, or, you know, they get personally frustrated. And so another thing a manager can do is help people disconnect themselves from, like, this is your job and you're enjoying it. Don't take it so personally. You know, be happy with the progress that we're making. Even if you think we should be doing something different, we are still making progress and we're going in the right direction. Of course, not always you are, but hopefully most of you are going in the right direction generally. And just being aware that there's a lot of good things. I think often as humans, probably it's a very animal instinct to always be focused on the danger and the bad things, right? Because that's what's going to hurt you. Whereas we often forget all the good things that we're doing every day. And so, yeah, celebrate, I guess, turning that around as a manager, celebrating successes and celebrating where people are doing good things is a very powerful tool as well, and lets people know that they are being, you know, noticed for the work they're doing.
Yeah, like there's a few different like types of retros that I like to do as well that help with a bunch of that stuff, like more like an American theme, but I do use it here as well, like a Thanksgiving type thing. We thank people for stuff, like even small stuff they've done, and just saying thanks to people just makes such a big difference. That, like, you don't have to give them money, right? Like, just be acknowledged. And then, you know, like end of Christmas, we usually do like a Christmas past, present, and future. Like, so you can put the past behind you and look forward to the new year and what things you're looking forward to, and what gift could I give you that would make your job better next year, and stuff like that, to get people to think more in a positive mind and be able to put the bad things behind them, because people can get really stuck on stuff and it's really hard to get them to shift.
Yeah, and those like little rewards can be like basically every day in every stand-up meeting, like thanks to Mike for doing this, thanks to Rose for doing that. Yeah, and like bringing that culture into the team so that people can be like thankful of each other, like thinking that they are all working towards the same thing.
Yeah, like simple stuff like just thanking them for doing your PR, right? So you can get it merged and stuff is like just means a lot to some people, especially when they spend a lot of time giving thoughtful feedback and stuff as well.
Right.
The other thing that I've seen work really well is a fun thing. So have once a month, you have an award for someone that's really gone above and beyond in that month, but you also have what we call the Dickas award. So that's someone that's really screwed up in the month. They've driven to work without their laptop, or they've gone to see a customer and they didn't take the presentation with, or really someone that's done something really silly, but celebrating that as well, because it shows people that, look, we are all just human and we all do make mistakes. So it's also having a balance between not just everyone that's doing a really great job, but hey, sometimes you do stuff up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think doing things like that is good, but I would double down on the everyday thank you to everything that gets done. Like, it's the little thank yous that build up over time that actually are worth way more than the trophy you get, you know, in a month because you did something outstanding. I think as a society, we probably don't do enough of that, actually. Like, we're not thankful enough to each other for all the value that we bring to each other every day.
Right. I think that's stuff like good wrap up, perhaps. Like
feels like we're getting to the end of the conversation, doesn't it?
yeah.
It's certainly 3 times as long as the one we had before. So.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, there we just like warmed up and then the time was up.
Yeah. So maybe on that note, I should thank Reza for hosting this.
Thank you for
thanks for sorting
being
that
available.
out.
Yeah, and we'll put the recording in YouTube so that everyone can watch, and if there's any questions, we'll be watching that area as well. But any last words? Any word of wisdom out of this? Anyone wants to share? Feel free.
I'll start thinking whether to change the organization or change my organization.
Yeah.
That is always the question.
Yeah.
I see Heidi here as well. Hey.
Hey, Heidi.
Hello, Heidi.
Hi.
Hi, sir. I'm still in the office, so I missed a bunch. Oh,
That's fine.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for attending, I guess, as well. Like it's
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to sometimes push yourself after work to go and do another session or get involved in something, and yeah, it's nice to see such a big crowd.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for all getting involved in this. Your discussions, questions, comments, answers, definitely worthwhile. All of that. A special thanks to Neil and Bronwyn for dedicating their time for this. Indira helping us running it as usual, always. And wishing you all have a really nice end of the year. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all of that.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.